The Flail has just been announced, so I'm quickly going to go over all the skill trees and passives, as well as all the mods for the weapon, so that you can modify your skills. But first, let's take a look at the weapon and all of its passives. All of this information you can get on nwdb.info, so a big thank you for them for getting this for us before the PTR goes live. So let's take a look. First, the skills. Let's take a look at the first skill and all of its passives. Arcane Smite. What does the skill do? Well, you leap forward and strike the ground with Arcane Force, dealing 130% weapon damage to all targets within a radius of impact. So pretty good. You leave behind a hazardous zone or area at impact point that inflicts a stack of impairment for 6 seconds to all targets that enter. Impairment deals 10% weapon damage per second and inflicts weaken for 10%, and it can stack up to 3 times. You'll see impairment is all over the flail, so you're gonna have a lot of weaken on this weapon. Let's move on to all of the passives. Epic Flail. Smite hits reduce its own cooldown by 5% per target, and this can stack up to 5 times, so 25% in total. Just a little extra cooldown reduction here. Moving on, Ironclad Superiority grants a bonus based on what shield type is equipped. So basically what shield you have will have different, effects. Let's take a look at the round shield. Smite deals 20% more base weapon damage, so the round shield gives you more damage. The kite shield. Smite will now stagger targets hit, but the damage is reduced to 90% weapon damage. So it will only scale with 90% weapon damage, but you will be able to stagger your targets if you have a kite shield equipped. And now the tower shield, the biggest shield out there. Basically, you will gain 30% fortify for 6 seconds when Smite is active. So pretty good, nice and tanky with a tower shield there. The last one is Deflecting Frailty. Allies that enter the hazardous area obtain Deflecting Frailty for 3 seconds, which when attacked will inflict a stacking weaken to enemies attackers when hit, reducing the enemy's damage dealt by 5%, stack for 5 seconds. So max stacks is 25%, I believe. So the max weaken, I believe. And additionally, while this effect is active, when allies are hit, they gain 10% life stealing for 3 seconds. Deflecting Frailty scales with focus, increasing its duration to up to 12 seconds. So this can last quite a bit, so pretty good. Moving on to the next passive here at the top. Oppressive Advantage. Abilities and heavy attack hits gain against targets with less than 50% health grant 5 Anointed and 10% haste to self. Anointed power scales with focus, increasing its power up to 20%. So basically, I guess Anointed increase the amount of health gained when healed. So this is like a divine almost. So it will increase slowly but surely as the passive activates. So pretty good. Just a little extra healing there for you. The next one is Happy Flails. Hitting a target with a basic attack within 3 seconds of using an ability will inflict exhaust, reducing stamina regeneration rate by 15% for 5 seconds. Almost like the Warhammer, exactly almost like the Warhammer, so pretty good. Let's move on to the next one, Vital Embrace. While at or below 50% health, all flail attacks grant 3% life stealing while attacking a target, and this can stack up to 3 times, so about 9% health, I guess, for life stealing. While above 50% health, all flail attacks extend the duration of damage over time effects on targets by 7%, so like bleeds and poisons and burns. So this is pretty good if you just auto attack constantly in a clump. Let's go to the next one, the Leader of the Pack. When no allies are within 5 meters, all flail attacks deal 10% more damage, so a little bit of a damage boost here. But when one or more allies are within 5 meters, they gain Empower, increasing their damage dealt by 5%. So you gain more damage when nobody's around you, but you also give more Empower to allies if they are around you as well. Moving on to the next ability, Arcane Vortex. Swirl the flail above the player's head, dealing 4 rapid hits of 85% weapon damage within a 3-meter radius around the player. After the first spin is completed, trigger a 3-meter blast of energy granting 10% Empower for 5 seconds to all allies inside the radius. This ability does have grit. So little empowerment and a little bit of a weapon damage there. You can also root with it. Flail Bird, I guess is the name. Hitting the target 4 times, so you need to hit all your swings within the thing. You will root the target for 1 second and immobilizing them. Basically like a Vine's ultimate, I guess. Just a little bit of a root, but you do need to hit them 4 times. So all your abilities, all your hits. Accelerated Advantage is the next one. Hitting a target with Arcane Vortex grant a stacking haste on self, increasing movement speed by 7% for 7 seconds, and this does stack 4 times. So you'll be quite fast. You can also boost up your allies, I believe. Allies within the radius of the attack are granted a haste as well, 25% haste for 5 seconds. So maybe they can escape or move a little bit here and there if you activate it. And then Flailing Stability. All allies within 3 meters of the player during the Arcane Vortex are cleansed of all crowd control status effects, roots, stuns, slows, and are immune to them for 2 seconds. So this last passive is crazy, especially if you're maybe in small scale PvP, pretty good. You're just going to remove all of the stuns and things. And then let's move on to just a little bit extra information. All allies inside are also healed for 65% weapon damage, and it does scale with focus. The more focus you have, the longer the crowd control immunity as well. It can go up to 6 seconds. So a little bit of a heal here as well, plus stun and crowd control immunity. Pretty decent. I think this is a really strong ability if you're going into the focus tree. Moving on to the next passive, Weighted Superiority. Grants cooldown reduction based on actions performed in different equip loads. So heavy, medium, light. Let's take a look at heavy. 1% cooldown reduction when hit or blocking a hit. So basically refreshing ward. They did remove refreshing ward from the patch, well, from the game, but here we get it again. So in heavy, 1% cooldown reduction when getting hit or blocked. In medium, it's a bit different. In medium, you get 5% cooldown reduction when dodging an attack, and then in light, you get 1% cooldown reduction when hitting a player. So light is when you attack a player, medium is when you dodge, and heavy is when you take damage. You'll gain cooldown reduction. Let's move on to the next passive, Spiky Impairment. Being hit or blocking a hit from a melee attack while above 90% health, inflict a stack of impairment for 6 seconds on the attacker, dealing 10% weapon damage per second and inflicting weaken, reducing their base damage by 10%, and it can only stack up to 30%, so or 3 times. Moving on to the next ability, Arcane Eruption. Boom. So let's take a look at drag the head of the flail against the ground, causing an eruption of arcane damage in front of the player, dealing 125 weapon damage, and inflict 2 stacks of impairment for 6 seconds to all targets. Automatically follow up with an additional melee attack that deals a little bit of damage here and there. Of course, impairment is the weaken that the flails comes with. So you can stack it up to 3 times again. crippling strike. Basically, you just add a slow, but targets hit with the first attack of the burst are slowed, reducing their movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds. Just a little slow there so they can't run away. Then of course it splits off here. Debilitating extension. The follow-up attack extends the duration of all debilitating status effects, range, weaken, exhaust, disease on the target by 30%. And then the next ability just on the left, supportive blessing. The follow-up attack consumes 1 stack of impairment on the target. Hit, trigger a chain that will bounce up to 4 times to allies within 6 meters of player, granting 130% of its total damage as health to each ally it chains to, and 80% of its total damage to self. So it only scales with focus. Healing scales exclusively with focus, so you will have to spec into focus. The whole left tree is more like a healer build, I believe is a focus build, but let's go to the tanky one next. Taking a look at the tanking one here, the first ability is Barrage. So what does it do? Well, sprint forward up to 10 meters. Upon reactivating the ability, pressing basic attack or reaching the end of the sprint, leap forward up to an additional 6 meters and slam the ground, dealing 30% weapon damage to target in range of the flail during the leap and 80% weapon damage upon landing and staggering targets on impact. You also avoid character collision, so you can sprint through people. Defending rush, hitting a target with any of barrage hits will grant a fortify, 30% fortify. The fortify has 2% duration, and every hit extends the duration of the status effect by 2 seconds up to 8 seconds. Moving through targets with bulldozer upgrade will also extend the duration. So bulldog is just underneath here. Well, bulldoze, not bulldog, bulldoze will extend the duration, but we will get to it. Next one, abiding superiority, grant a bonus to barrage based on what shield type is equipped. For example, round shield, barrage hits for 30% more base weapon damage. The kite shield, barrage hits inflict 20% slow for 4 seconds. This will also slow targets moved through with the bulldoze upgrade, which is super good. And then the tower shield, barrage gains grit while active, so a little bit of grit so you can't get staggered. And then bulldozed, the one that they all hyped up for us. The barrage can now block attacks while charging forward without consuming any stamina, and will push all enemies they move through to the side. So basically clear the Red Sea with it. Basically just open up all the enemies, move out of the way. But let's move on to the last one. Failure to launch. Barrage attacks now trigger a 2.5 meter blast of energy around the target on hit, dealing 35% weapon damage to all nearby targets and granting fortify to all allies within the radius, increasing armor by 20% for 8 seconds. So you get so much fortify with this ability, plus it's a gap closer. I think this is probably one of the best abilities that will be used. So definitely a must pick for me, I think, just because gap closers are so strong. So definitely something I'll try out first. Moving on to the next passive here, Vital Super Synth. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but while at or above 50% health, reduce damage taken by 4%. So you'll take less damage while above 50% health, and then while below 50% health, reduce the attacker's stamina damage dealt while blocking, so you can block for longer when you get damaged more. So below 50% health, you can block a little bit more by 10%. Moving on to another passive here, Reinforce Vitality. Increase your max health by 25% based on your physical armor rating while you have the flail equipped. Super effective. This effect is active as long as the flail is equipped, even if the flail is sheathed. So you can still have this little bit of buff. So nice and tanky. Let's go to the next ability or skill, Trip. Swing the flail forward, latching onto a target, dealing 50% weapon damage and knocking them to the ground. So a little bit of CC there. Going forward, let's take a look. Flailing duration. Tripping a target applies a special debuff to the target, lasting 3 seconds. Allies that hit the affected enemy will reduce the duration of all damage over time effects on themselves by 10% per hit while active. There is a cooldown for 1 second, but basically you'll be removing the bleeds and the burns. Let's move on to the next passive here. You got Flail. Hitting weakened targets with Trip will inflict 15% rend, so nice little rend there on the target, and granting more fortify, 15% fortify on self for 5 seconds. Super good, getting nice and tanky with this ability. And then the last passive, Destabilize, adds a follow-up heavy attack that deals extra damage, just 145 damage. So you can do quite a bit of damage with this, knockdown and some damage. Let's move on to the passive up here. The ability name is Crude Flailment. Hitting a target with a heavy attack within 3 seconds of using an ability will cleanse 1 stack of any debuff from self and will also inflict a stack of impairment for 6 seconds to the target, dealing 10% weapon damage per second and weakening them, reducing their base damage by 10%. So pretty good. It does stack up to 3 times. We all know what impairment does by now. Let me just go here to the next passive. The next passive is Reductive Superiority. Grants status effects duration modification on self based on what type of shield is equipped. So for the round shield, increase duration of all limited duration buffs on player by 10%. So this is probably like Empower and something like that. So you will increase it. For the kite shield, decrease duration of damage over time and debilitating effects on the player. So it will reduce burns and bleeds and things like that. And then for the tower shield, you will decrease duration of crowd control effects on player by 10%. So basically just like a freedom. So pretty good ability, just a little bit of extra utility in this ability. For the next passive, it's called Flail Mary. While stam is at or below 30%, activate an ability will grant you extra stamina. You will gain 15 extra stamina, but do notice that there is a 5-second cooldown. So you can't just spam all your abilities and gain instant stamina. Wait 5 seconds and then you can spam them again. Moving on to the last passives, I will go over the ultimates in a minute, but moving to the last passive, Mitigated Protection. When blocking a hit, gain a 3-second stacking status effect. Every block hit extends the duration of this status effect by 3 seconds to a maximum of 9 seconds. And while the effect is active, gain a variable damage absorption based on current health percentage and equip load. So at heavy, if you wear heavy, 5% absorption at full health, increasing to a maximum of 20% mitigation as health decreases. So the first hit is reduced by 5%, and then as your health decreases, it caps out to 20% mitigation. So pretty good for heavy armor users. So let's go to medium. For medium, the first hit is reduced by 3%, and then it will cap out as your health reduces to 13% mitigation. And then for light, the first hit will only get reduced by 1%, and then it will cap out to a maximum of 7%. I'm not sure if light should take this ability or passive. Maybe there's something better out there, but pretty decent for heavies. Taking a look at the last ability, Warding Bludgeon, which is pretty good, I think. Performing a spinning leap, then swing the flail down to strike target, deal 100% weapon damage. While leaping, trigger a burst of energy, granting a reinforced fortify to self and all allies within 3 meters of the player, increasing armor by 50% for 8 seconds or until 3 hits are taken. So you're going to be super tanky. 50% fortify just from that. This ability does have, well, it does have grit. Moving on to the passive just below it, stable impairment. Stamina damage stamina damage taken is reduced by 25% for 0.5 seconds after activating block. Additionally, blocking hits with the reinforced fortify from warding bludgeon is active will inflict a stack of impairment. We all know impairment causes weaken and damage on the other player. 10% damage and 10% weaken, stack up to 3 times. Moving on to the last one, base friend. Upon ability activation, a nearby ally within 6 meters is selected and you become linked to them. While the connection is active, they gain Empower, increasing their base damage by 15%, so increase their damage, and you both gain damage absorption, reducing damage taken by 10% for 8 seconds or until player move further than 6 meters apart from each other. So super good. This ability makes you super tanky, or you can take free hits just like that. So if it's free abilities, you're like good, dude. You're pretty good. So this will make you super tanky. All of these abilities seem pretty good to me. But let's take a look at the ultimates. Let's start on the right. This one is called Human Shield. Hitting a target with an ability while within 6 meters of an ally applies a status effect linking yourself and a single ally to each other for 5 seconds. While the effect is active, the ally will only take 50% of incoming damage and causing you to inherit 35% of the incoming damage they didn't take. So you will take the damage that your ally gets, but only 35% of the damage will come to you. Moving on to the next ultimate here, Better Together. So let's take a look. While within 4 meters of one or more allies, grant passive healing to self and all allies that heals for 16% weapon damage every 2 seconds, and this does scale with focus. Healing exclusively scales with focus, so the more focus you have, the more healing you will get. So overall, I think the Flail is super good. I love the abilities and passives, making you super tanky, or you can heal a little bit more and buff and debuff enemies or allies. Let's take a look at the mods here. Some of them, well, I already took a quick look at them. They're nothing special, but let's take a look. Murdering Smite, PvP only. Smite hits against targets extend their active cooldowns by 5%. So their cooldowns will increase. If you have this ability, they have to wait a little bit longer for it. So pretty decent, I guess. Bending Vortex, every 2 hits with Vortex will heal you for 5% of base weapon damage. Remember, Vortex has 4 hits, so you will only heal for 10% if you do hit all your attacks with it, well, with the ability. And then Powerful Eruption. Eruption hits deal 2% increase base damage per stack of impairment on the target, max 3 stacks, so you get about 6% extra damage there. Maybe if the ability is super good for damage, maybe you want that 6% extra damage, but who knows, it doesn't seem too good to me. Maybe you're gonna lose out on something big. Let's move on to the next one, Accelerating Barrage. After hitting a target with Barrage, main attacks gain 5% haste for 5 seconds. So a little bit of haste here you get on it. Not too bad. Maybe you can catch up on people. But let's move on to the next one. Taunting Trip. If Trip's first attack hits a target with active grid, the attack deals a little bit more damage. Only 10% more base damage. So more damage here. All of them are not super good. But let's take a look at the last one. Crowded Bludgeoned. If 2 or more targets are hit with warding bludgeoned, even if the hits are blocked, reduce its cooldown by 5%. This might be super useful depending on the cooldown, since this gives you so much fortify and damage reduction. Maybe this is a little bit more useful. Maybe this one is the best one out of all of them if you want uptime on being tanky. Well, that is everything about the Flail. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give this video a like, or you can go follow me on Twitch. I'm pretty lonely over there. I just started streaming, so you can watch me over there. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.